Hello, hello! You are listening to CPA Career Path podcast with Rosie Flaherty, CPA MSA. This is episode number 15. In this episode, we continue the conversation with Jacqueline Pardo, EQ certified, MBA, CPA, CGMA about her CPA journey. You're super active in volunteering in different positions as you just mentioned. So based on your experience talking to so many future CPAs, what are some main characteristics that you always share with them that they should have to be successful in this profession?
Yeah. So when I think about what are those baseline things that an employer is going to be looking for, right? And so I think about it under that context, which I think helps you become successful in your career, or what I call it, I'm all about maximizing your opportunities. So that's kind of how I talk about it when I'm talking to students or people interviewing for jobs, that type of thing. How can you set yourself up to maximize your opportunities? And so the things that I really encourage people to think about is having that natural curiosity, right? That's what led me at a very young age at 15 to really find accounting, because I was just naturally curious, wanting to learn how things work. Like, what was this? What is the why behind this? How do things connect? So when I think about in our profession, if you have that natural curiosity, one, that usually translates into analytical abilities, right? And critical thinking skills, which we hear CPAs, right? That's really awesome. So I'm thinking, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Show your natural curiosity. That's like one of my go-to. If you don't remember anything else, ask questions. Don't feel like you don't need to ask them. I actually get worried when people don't ask me questions. It has a reverse effect. And even in an interview, if I had candidates who didn't ask me thoughtful questions, they would not get hired, because I'm looking for that ability to want to learn, want to know, want to see how things work together, solve that puzzle, right? Put the pieces together, see the big picture, but also see that detail. So that characteristic of asking questions, that natural curiosity, is probably my biggest advice for people.
So you mentioned it is curiosity. Are there any other characteristics that you think that are very important as well?
Communication, right? I'm always going to say that. I think if you can ask questions, then typically lots of times those help go with each other, is to communicate. Over communication is my rule of thumb, right? I see so much miscommunication in workplaces today. I've seen them for years, but when I am designing programs at organizations or coaching individuals, most of the time it comes down to that there is a lack of communication, no communication, miscommunication, and that's natural, right? In life, we're all humans, right? We're not robots who can make sure we do things perfect. And I say that in parentheses for those who are listening to us and not watching us. I say that because perfection doesn't exist, but how can you be a good communicator? And that's keeping people up to date, asking questions. It kind of piggybacks on that. It's over communication, not being afraid of that, making sure people are really clear on what they need to do, or for yourself, what are your expectations and what do I need to do to make sure if someone hasn't communicated, to remember it's a two-way street and you should ask and make sure you're clear on what's being communicated and expected of you. So, I can go on for like days of all the characteristics, but I say if I can get those couple of things, that you have a great attitude, natural curiosity, and you can communicate and you err on the side of over communication, I can teach you anything. You have to, make sure you have that accounting degree. Let's rock and roll, because you care, you want to go. Let's go.
Very determined. So it doesn't seem that we are asking a lot from like students or from future CPAs to succeed in this profession. So what do you think why we have some issues with this profession pipeline, like not many people join this profession? What could be those reasons and how can we fix those problems?
Yeah, we definitely have a pipeline issue, problem, challenge, whatever we want to say, opportunity perhaps, right? There's a lot of macro factors that for sure have affected. I mean, if you look at things like birth rates, we have fewer people in the United States. We have fewer people going into college itself, enrolling in colleges. So if we have a fewer people, just the big pool of people were fewer. Then that pool that's smaller already, there's fewer of them, that are even going to college. We're getting fewer people going into accounting. And then when we have accounting graduates, fewer people are taking the exam, right? So there's a lot of different steps along, the journey, as we call it, and whys, right? There's a lot of people may prioritize things different. They think more short term than long term. To me, I'm like, let's get my exam over, get my 3 letters behind my name, because I know that's going to maximize my opportunities, right? Back to that phrase I say. And I just want to get it past me. And so some people don't think of it like that. They think of, well, right now, I don't want to study again. Well, I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking my career. I want to knock this out in 6 months and be done with it versus waiting and that type of thing. So to answer your question, I don't think there's one reason why. It's a bunch of things, a lot of macro things, of course. And so how can we solve that? I also think it's a bunch of little things. I think it's continuing to educate people on what you can do with, an accounting degree, with your CPA license, what that means, what that looks like. Educating people on that is a lot about awareness, getting into schools at high school at minimum, right? Just think about me, my story. I determined I was going to be in accounting in high school. If I didn't have that job and the CFO happened to not be my boss, I don't know what path I would have taken because I had never heard of what accounting was. Never. No one in my family was an accountant. I didn't know what a CPA was. Never even heard about it, right? So more and more awareness. So one of the things that we do on the AICPA Student Recruitment Committee is we go out and speak to high schools and colleges about our profession. So whoever wants to go and help spread the word, you can reach out to me. We have a lot of resources. You don't have to come up with any presentation or anything. We connect you with the presentation. We'll help you connect with your state society to get in the schools. So you just let me know. So that is one of the things that we need to do. And we need to, I would say my biggest thing would be, let's think big. Let's not be afraid to change, to evolve, to take risk, to think differently. And that's what I want us to think about. So every firm, every organization with accounting, finance professionals, just because we've done it X way in the past doesn't mean that's what motivates people and what drives their happiness now. So what does that culture look like in your firm and your organization? And don't be afraid to change. There are so many people who do leave the profession, just like what you said earlier, because some people have worked a lot of hours, right? And some people also don't work that many hours, honestly, Rosie. So you got to find the right firm or the right company, the right organization. It could be government. It's whatever, right? That makes you happy. Go find that fit to really find what works for you. And they do exist. I know a ton of firms, a ton of organizations that invest in their people. They don't work a bazillion hours a week, that type of thing. So think about what really drives you and be intentional about your career. Be the number one advocate of your career to go and look for those things. So your question about the whole pipeline, yes, there's lots of reasons. And I think there's lots of little things we can do to really continue to build out and maximize the pipeline, right? Not every single person in the world is going to be an accountant. But how do we set ourselves up for awareness and education about the opportunities that you can have as best as we can. And we shouldn't be afraid to change something just because of something that was done years ago.
How about we do this? Pretend me I'm a high school student and you come to me and then you try to persuade me to go for accounting. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in high school. I'm so confused. So many options out there. And I'm not sure if accounting is good for me.
Yeah, well, I can hear you all the time, and it's not really for me to persuade anyone to be an accountant necessarily. My role is to create awareness of what our field is and what opportunities could exist if you get your license and things like that. And so I do this all the time. I go into high schools. I just did it before the school year ended in county about 45 minutes from my house. And I drove to that accounting class and I talked to them. And there was a lot of students who said exactly what you said. I don't know. I'm a junior. I'm a senior in high school. I don't even know what accounting is. I don't know what is it. So how we really talk to high school students is I think about like in a business, all the different facets of it. And one of the big things in a business is money, right? You got to have your financials to run a business and what department, what type of professional is really helping you with that. And it's usually the accounting professionals, right? And so I first just create awareness and education about some general things with accounting. And then I get into understanding what each student likes to do. Like I would go around the room and I'd ask them like, what do you enjoy? And some people are like, oh, I like gaming. Well, guess what? Every industry has to have accountants. There are gaming companies who have accountants, who have CFOs. So you can look at from that context. Some people are like, they like to build and solve puzzles. Cool. That's how I describe my whole journey into accounting is, solving puzzles and problems and putting things together and coming up with solutions, right? So we got to get down to like foundational things to create the education and awareness of what accounting is in broad sense and really get to understand what they like to do and show them, hey, based on those things you like, here are some ideas or some examples of how the things that make you happy, the things that you like, how you could in a career with being an accountant, a CPA, fulfill that happiness. Now, again, not everyone is going to be an accountant, right? But we need to start educating people of the field, of the possibilities, so you can explore, right? Take an accounting course in high school, do a job shadow, do an internship, take some accounting courses, places, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can learn even more after some of us in the field can go help create that general education and awareness. So that question you posed happens all the time to me.
So has anyone came up to you and saying that they like to go in accounting, but they are concerned about technologies, how technology is going to affect this profession? How did you deal with those questions?
Yeah. So has the question come up? I don't know if that's specifically in the high school audience it doesn't come up. I would hear that more in the college audience. But what I think is very interesting in the conversation that we usually get into in that area is technology is absolutely going to change our profession. And I think about just like a human, right? We're meant to grow, evolve, change. So as we're growing, evolving, changing, things like technology is coming into our world and our businesses and our firms, and we need to embrace it and be able to become more of the business advisor, the risk advisor, the business partner, the analyzer, right? Those leadership competencies that early on I said, if you ask questions, if you can communicate, if you could do those type of things, that's what people need from us, our profession. And I think that's where we're evolving to, and some already have, right? So I don't think technology is taking accountants' jobs away. I think us as accountants and CPAs need to know how to interpret, review, analyze, bring in technology to help businesses run efficiently and effectively. How can we use tools to help do our audits and do tax returns and things like that. We need to embrace it, and we can have a huge role in technology in any firm, in any company that you're in. So that's how, when it comes up, that's the context I usually go into it. And sometimes I also go into my personal experience of how I've helped implement systems in companies across the entire organization, across the whole subsidiary, even within the accounting department, some technology that we've implemented that helps us, where it doesn't necessarily mean you implement something and you have a layoff. It means you implement something and now we have a different set of skills that we need to exhibit to help the business, right? And that makes sense. Our accounting profession, we have to evolve. We can't be afraid of change. We have to embrace it, evolve, grab a hold of it. And to me, I'm like, let's drive this sucker, right? And so the more and more we can do that, I think the better this conversation even is. So I don't know, a ton of great examples of that already happening, of course.
One thing I want to bring up is that with technology, we can limit a lot of travels. You can do virtual training, you can do virtual callings, virtual meetings, and also a lot of people go into hybrid schedule right now. And with your business that you do a lot of coaching from like virtually coaching people, I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit about body language for people when they work from home and then or when they have any clients call.
Yeah. And, hybrid work, flexible arrangements, all remote, there's all these different terms. And quite frankly, they've all existed way before COVID kind of accelerated most companies to kind of go to those models. And when I think about being online with a client, a customer, a partner, a peer, whatever, right? It's the same principal concepts as if you were in person. So it just translates onto a screen. So sometimes you can still read my body language, right, Rosie? Like you can hear words, right? You can hear my tone of voice. You can see kind of I'm expressive in my eyes, and you see that passion come out. And maybe someone's not as emotionally expressive as I am, but we have to just be a little more intentional about it because you can't see a whole person, right? So there's a ton of things. I actually spoke about digital body language at AICPA Engage. I have a whole course on it based on Erica Dewan's book, Digital Body Language. It's a fantastic book if you haven't read hers, so I'd encourage you to go get it. But there are lots of rules of thumb of like how to write digitally, as far as like executive presence on the screen. Be deliberate in that you're listening. Do not do two things at once. I mean, that's the easiest rule of thumb. Still dress for the role. I know a lot of people are like, oh, working from home, I can look like a slob. I don't understand that, because if I'm working with a client, I want to be my authentic self, of course. Yeah, I've never worn like a tuxedo to work anyway. I'm not going to wear a tuxedo at home, right? But I'm still going to be put together just as if I were in person, as if I were, in front of the camera like I'm here with you today. So nothing has changed. You got to make sure that you still communicate. And quite frankly, you really have to, again, over communicate and be very intentional about the body language, your presence, and check for that understanding throughout those conversations, just because you may not have those chances that you would naturally have to, I'll catch them in the hallway later and clarify something, right? You have to be intentional. Well, I may need to call them on Teams or Zoom or something and be intentional. So you can still accomplish the same work, whether you're in person, whether you're, online like we are here today, but you do have to be cognizant of it, and you have to think about how it translates to the digital world.
When you talk or answer, I see your body language and your arms just really active. But for me, whenever I talk and you don't see my arms at all, I'm under the camera, and you just see my shoulder point moving up and down for a little bit. That's it. So do you really recommend that people to like more active on the body language from the camera because we just see half of the body only, or it doesn't matter?
I would say first rule of thumb is always be yourself. So if I'm a person like you said you don't really use anyone who knows me knows I'm very expressive with my arms and my hands. That's just how I talk. Been like that for years. But that is not what I'm saying that anyone else needs to be. First rule of thumb is be yourself, or you're not going to feel comfortable, right? Second, you just have to be a little more intentional. So what I always give advice on, how I coach people through this, is start with your words, right? People can't read your mind. So perhaps you're not using your hands in discussion. You don't have to, but you can use your tone of voice. You can use the words coming out of your mouth to even say, hey, Rosie, thank you for being really engaged, because you're looking at the camera and you're nodding, and I can see that you're really actively listening, right? Those are the same thing. That's equivalent to Jacqueline's arms and hands. We just express differently, right? But we are both equally probably engaged in the conversation, right? You could show it with a smile. You could show the tone of voice. You can lean forward, look at the camera. And if none of that feels right, start with words. Start with saying, I'm stressed because of X. Express the feeling, say the words, and put the fact in there with it. And that at least shows people, hey, they're stressed, or I'm really getting excited, Rosie, that you invited me here today, right? If I wasn't expressive in the arms, I could at least say that with words and maybe that tone of my voice, right? So absolutely not. Don't be Jacqueline unless that's what you're comfortable with. But number one, be yourself. Two, think about something small you can start doing to express yourself, because you do have to be a little more cognizant of it and understand how it translates across the camera.
I feel like I can talk about this topic all day long. Because it's just so important nowadays when we have just virtual calls, virtual meetings pretty much every day. So it's just super important that people need to know all of these concepts that you just share about. So I just want to touch on another topic that you did mention about maximize opportunities, that you mentioned multiple times on this. That's something I feel like you really want to focus on, either from you talk with the high school or with the college students, or based on your career path as well. So my question for you is, with young CPA or young accountants out there, how can they maximize their opportunities from very early career stage?
Yeah. So it's something I thought about early on too. And so I'll kind of give you an example through what I live, my story per se, and everyone would take it, right, and make it for them, because everyone's a different human. We all have different things. But so when I went into college, right, I'm getting my undergraduate degree in accounting. And then when I'm thinking about maximizing my opportunities in my career, I'm thinking long term, and I'm thinking, oh, well, in accounting, what are different ways that I can have opportunities, right? You just got to ask yourself that simple question and do research. Ask people. I ask professors. I ask people in my internship, and gather feedback and information, and then choose what you think is best for yourself, right? Again, you have to ask. You have to be active in your career. I always tell every single person, you yourself has to be the number one advocate of your career. I, as like your coach, as your boss, as your whatever, I will be your number two advocate. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to support you. I'm going to push you to do your best. I'm going to talk about you when you're not in the room to get you those opportunities. But I can't want it more than you, right? You've got to be number one. Then someone else could be number two. So when I'm thinking about that, I was like, oh, certifications, right? That helps maximize your opportunities. And also degrees. So I got an undergraduate degree. Then I wanted to get my master's of business. I didn't necessarily have to have it. I did need some additional hours. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of taking like a basket weaving to get hours to take the CPA exam, I had a personal goal that I always wanted to learn more about a business. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get my graduate degree. Then I'm going to go get my CPA certification. Then I'll start talking with partners and managers within the firm and saying, okay, I think I would love to give back to my community and volunteer. And lots of times, being a CPA, people look for CPAs to be on their board of directors or on their audit committees or on their finance committees. And I'm like, that would be great experience. And so you got to let people know, right, these things. And it's not just one person, it's many people. Hey, here's what my goal is. Here's how I'm maximizing opportunities. Ask them advice. Again, gather feedback, but then you make the decision. So I went and got the CPA, and I went and got my master's, and I started getting on boards, and I started taking on projects at work. And so I asked questions. I communicated. I was my number one advocate in my career. And then later on, when I was at my publicly traded global company, I went and got my certification on leadership training. So I would then train across the US our managers on how to be a manager, like those leadership competencies that you needed. So I got a certification because I knew that would help maximize opportunity. When I started my business, I love emotional intelligence work. So I'm certified in EQ, emotional intelligence, right? So throughout your journey, early, later, it doesn't matter. Ask the questions. How can I maximize an opportunity? Maybe it's as simple as having a couple conversations and volunteering to speak at an event. Because guess what? That also helps maximize opportunities because people hear you. You get practice. People know you're willing to go the extra mile, that you care, those type of things. So it could be little things. It could be big things. That's up to you to decide. But I would say just think about any decision in the context says, am I going to learn something? Does this help achieve a goal I have? Maximize opportunities, etc.
How about in a situation that someone wants to get to the position that at the moment that person is not qualified? How can you recommend that person to maximize the opportunity?
I would first start with understanding what does it take to be in that role. So in lots of organizations, you could have something formal written, like there could be, like I design role expectations. So in some companies and firms, maybe you have role expectations and you're like, oh, what are the technical, what are the development leadership, what are all the competencies, requirements, expectations to be in that role? And then right? Let's say there's not a formal piece of paper, no problemo. Ask, right? This is how you ask and communicate. Ask that person, ask a mentor, ask HR, ask people, right? What does it take to be in certain position? These type of things. And then again, be your number one advocate in your career. Talk with your manager, talk with your boss, talk with your partner, whatever it is, and start communicating. This is the position I want. Here's why. Here's my understanding of the expectations and requirements for the role. What are your thoughts? What am I missing? What else should I think about? And then once you're solid on what those are, then you start taking ownership of that and doing. I'm always a big advocate of doing the role before maybe you officially get it. You're showing that you can do it. You're exhibiting those leadership skills or those specific responsibilities, maybe even of that role. So a few times a year, maybe every quarter, you're talking with your boss in your one-on-one and it's career development focused. And you're saying, hey, I know last quarter you gave me expectations for the role that I want to get to next. I jotted down some things that I've been doing that I think exhibit those competencies. What do you think? Do you think they also align? Yep, they sure do. Cool, thank you. 3 months later, you don't bring up this conversation every week, right? These career conversations should be an every week thing, but it's every quarter, every whatever. And you're just making sure you're aligned. You're getting feedback. You're aligned that what you're doing is exhibiting characteristics and competencies that you're going to be capable and being available to be promoted at some point into that role. So it's constant communication, constant alignment, right, of those conversations, etc. So that's how I would think about something like that.
So you should come up with a plan, just as you mentioned at the very beginning about studying for CPA exam. Everything needs to have a plan.
And then break it down. My whole practice, I talk about taking baby steps. Create the goals, create the plan, but break down those goals, break down the plan into manageable chunks. I even would say break them down into baby steps. And what does this look like? Because if we have a goal that takes a ton of effort, most people don't go do that, right? Because they can't go from point A to point Z. They need to go from A, B, C, D, E, F, then to Z, right? Eventually. You can't just go from A to Z. So it's just something of how every human is built. Break it down, do baby steps, keep that, that vision, that goal, that longer term goal in sight by breaking down everything. And please celebrate your successes along the way. We often forget to do that, right? We wait till we get to that goal. I passed the exam before we celebrate. No, we should celebrate when we get a plan together. Then we should celebrate after we studied our first week. And then we should, right? Whatever those celebration and milestones are for you, you pick them. But so often we don't do it until the very end. And actually celebrating milestones throughout helps things like your leadership competency of self-regard, keeps you motivated, right? So please don't forget to celebrate yourself.
That's so true. I have to agree with you about that. A lot of us, or even myself, when I get to the goal that I want, I was okay. I got this one. What's next? And plan to move on to the next one. Yeah. My husband calm down.
Take a breath, Rosie. Celebrate it. Let's talk about it for a minute. Let's sit in that success. Reward yourself with whatever that is. It's a day off. It's a piece of jewelry. It's a massage. It's a ice cream. I don't know what it is. You pick what that is. But sit in it for a second and then create your next goal.
I know, right? But sometimes when you deal with people who are too, I would say, passionate about the career or too passionate about anything, they just want to do anything as much as they can and as soon as possible as well. Yeah. So I feel like we go through a lot of items about CPA career, but I'm just wondering, with you, like very, very busy lady, how can you have work-life balance? How can you have time for yourself?
I call it work-life integration. That's one of the things I say. The reason why I say work-life integration is work-life balance. I think the term, when I've heard it before, is like, hey, you work 9 to 5 and outside of that, you balance your life. I'm like, that doesn't really work for most people because think about it. Life happens. You got to just something as simple as a doctor's appointment. Usually you can't go at midnight to a doctor's appointment, right? So I call it all about work-life integration. It's all about integrating what you need to do in your full life to be happy. And that's things that make you money, and that's things that, and what you love to do to make money, and things, your personal life and that type of thing. So with work-life integration, I get very deliberate with my calendar. I schedule time off. I take time off. So there's the infamous people who go, yeah, I'm taking vacation, but I'll have my phone, I'll have my laptop, and they're working the whole time. That's not vacation, right? There's plenty of research out there. I'm not a doctor, but there's plenty of scientific research out there that supports you have to unplug. You have to take a reset for lots of, reasons, lots of benefits there. So put it on your calendar, block it, and then it's up to you to communicate it, right? So communicate it, get it approved, make sure everyone knows weeks leading up to it, et cetera, et cetera. I've taken more vacations this year than I ever have in my life, and my business is doing better than it was last year. Again, you just have to plan it, schedule it, know that you're worth taking time off, investing in the things that make you happy, both in your work and personal life. You're one human. You're not a different human at work and a different human at home per se, right? So block it, be deliberate about it, communicate it. I block every Friday on my calendar. And sometimes I control my calendar on Fridays to only sometimes do I take a client meeting on a Friday, for example. So whatever works for you, I'm not saying that's what everyone needs to do, but come up with, again, what works best for you, and then plan it, schedule it, communicate it, do it, meet your expectations, know what your expectations are, do them. What are your expectations for yourself and others at work, personal life, et cetera, et cetera. So self-care is a real thing that everyone should prioritize. And I hope that you find the method that works best for you.
I cannot believe that you still have that much time for like vacation, because you did not just only work at your own business, but you also volunteer so much on the top of that, and then you have vacation. So can you share with us what are the main benefits from volunteering that make you stay so motivated to volunteer at so many positions?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, early on, I volunteered like early in my life. And then as being a CPA, after getting that, I volunteer a lot too. First of all, there's a need. And what my biggest advice for when you volunteer for something is it needs to align with what you're passionate about. So I get questions and asked all the time to be on boards and volunteer for things. Obviously, I have to also work to make money, so I can't be 100% volunteer. That would be cool, but I'm not at that point right now in my life where I can just be 100% volunteer. So I have to be very intentional. So my first kind of rule of thumb is, what am I passionate about that I want to be a part of? Like, I am the treasurer of the Girl Scouts here, one of our councils here in Kentucky. I'm very passionate about building future female leaders, right? So that aligns very well with, I like to build future business leaders in our CPA profession. I like to build future female leaders too. So it kind of has a theme that's very similar, right? Different angles, but very similar. I'm passionate about that. So I volunteer there. So that's kind of where I start. And then it's all about balance or integrating. I have to say no a lot, right? And no is a complete sentence. There's a lot of things that I would love to be a part of that I've said no because I just can't do another thing. I volunteer for a lot right now. So I think for anyone, advice for anyone listening is, first determine what you're passionate about. Find organizations, if you want to give back to your community, that align with your passions. And then communicate, tell people, contact the organizations, tell your mentors, tell your coaches, contact people. Like, we're both the AICPA Leadership Academy, right? We all talk all the time. Our alumni, there's opportunities all the time. Tell someone. And don't worry, volunteer opportunities will come to you. Everyone's always looking for a CPA.
Yeah, volunteering is just amazing. It's something very different when you just go to work and get the job done and go home, comparing with that you go to work, get the job done, and you go out see other CPAs. So that's pretty amazing for me. When I start volunteering as being a CPA, people look at you very differently. Thank you so much for your interview today. You touched on a lot of great topics about CPA career and also being about maximizing the opportunities to advance the career as well. Thank you so much for your time, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Rosie, for having me. I'm very passionate about our profession, about building future leaders and really helping find people's potential and helping them grow and things like that. I'm sure we could talk for hours. But yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope everyone enjoys our podcast.